How are you, everyone? This is Jason from Pineville Christian Church. I want to welcome you to our Wednesday edition of kind of looking at some of the experiences that Jesus had during his last week of life here on planet Earth as recorded in the Gospels. You know, on Wednesday, we don't have a lot of information about what Jesus did. There's not any real definitive passages that tell us what he did on Wednesday, and it's kind of been called the silent day. You know, and there may even be something to learn from that, is that as Jesus had a huge weekend ahead and the whole experience of crucifixion, you know, he took a day of rest, and there may be something to learn there. But I did want to share a passage with you from John chapter 12, starting in verse 27, that I think would give us, some unique insights into what Jesus is going through and something that we can learn from today. So let me read this to you. Jesus says, "Now my soul is deeply troubled. Should I pray? Father, save me from this hour. But this is the very reason I came. Father, bring glory to your name." Then a voice spoke from heaven saying, "I have already brought glory to my name, and I will do so again." When the crowd heard the voice, some thought it was thunder, while others declared an angel had spoken to him. Now there's some very unique things that we can see here in this passage from John chapter 12. The first thing is we see the emotion and the passion of Jesus. You know, he says, "My soul is deeply troubled." I mean, I can't think of anything more troubling than to know that in a few days I may be experiencing crucifixion. I mean, this is troubling. It's troubling for me to even think about having to go and have nails put in my hands and my feet and dying through suffocation because of the blood filling my lungs. So this is troubling. Not to mention the fact that Jesus is also troubled by what the New Testament tells us is literally the weight of the sin of the world that's about to be placed upon him. You know, and how about the fact that he knows one of his friends is betraying him, and that a lot of his other friends are gonna deny him and scatter. I mean, so Jesus is, if anybody has a right to say I'm deeply troubled, it's Jesus at this point. And so he's really troubled, and you get a picture of his humanity here, and he asks a rhetorical question. He says, "Should I pray, Father, save me from this hour?" And of course he answers it with, "But this is the very reason I came. Father, I want to bring glory to your name." You know, certainly any of us can look and understand the depth of emotion that Jesus is going through. You know, but as we see what he's going through, something stands out to me that I think is worth sharing for all of us. You know, sometimes following the path of God, the path he has for us, is very hard and it's difficult. I mean, you think that Jesus could not be more perfectly aligned with the will of the Father here, but the path before him is very hard and it's very difficult. And we can't expect, there's another place where, you know, the servant isn't greater than the master, Jesus told his disciples. Sometimes we have to face things that are hard and difficult. And we don't need to be unaware of that. We just have to be prepared that there are moments in time where we're going to battle through some tough, hard things. Some of us are going through some of those right now, not just physically, but emotionally, financially. Now, the troubles that we face are minuscule in comparison to what Jesus was going through, but they're real. They're real for us. And so sometimes to follow in the path that God has for us requires us to fight through some very hard and difficult things. You know, one of the other things that I want to point out for us to think about is whenever we do have to go through some of these things, when following God gets hard, will you quit or do you abandon ship? You know, that's the natural tendency, right? So many people today, whenever their Christianity or whenever following Christ doesn't turn out just exactly the way they want, or that they don't receive a certain blessing or it doesn't work out, they quit or they abandon ship or they change course. You know, we really need to learn from Jesus here whenever he faces these very difficult circumstances and he's deeply troubled, all right? Way more troubled than you and I will ever be. He surrenders in obedience to the will of the Father and realizes that God has a greater plan and that God's going to use his suffering, and we know later on, because we have the benefit of looking back, right, that this suffering, this deeply troubling experience is used to bring about the redemption of all humanity. You know, in your life, how often do you short-circuit God's plan because you abandon ship when it gets hard? Or you quit when it gets difficult, or you lash out, or you have a wrong response other than saying, "Father, This is why I'm here. I want to bring glory to your name. You know, how hard is it to bring glory to God's name whenever you're going through suffering, when you're going through heartache? But this is an opportunity for you to really demonstrate your faith. One of the things that I've been so excited about is seeing how the children of God, Christians, are showing His love, and they're reaching out and they're helping people, and this is the way it should be. If we're really going to follow the Master, we have to embrace the hard, suffering, difficult times and use them to bring honor and glory to His name. You know, the final thing that I want to close out with today is really a unique point I don't know if you've ever thought about. I want you to look down at verse 29. It says, all right, so in 28, the voice comes from heaven. The voice spoken from heaven says, I have already brought glory to my name, and I will do so again. This is really a confirmation to Jesus, right, from His Father. But when the crowd heard the voice, so there is a voice, the Bible tells us, this voice comes from heaven. All right, this confirmation to Jesus from God the Father. But when the crowd hears the voice, listen to this, some thought it was thunder, while others declared an angel had spoken. So the reality happens, God speaks from heaven. But notice, not everyone hears it the same. You know, that is so appropriate and so important for you and I today. You see, not everyone can hear and see what God is doing. You know why? Because they're not listening and they're not watching. You see, I don't know where you find yourself today, but in that crowd that day, some people got to hear the voice of God giving Jesus this confirmation of His glory. Others didn't hear anything but thunder. Let me ask you a question. Whenever things are going on in your life, do you just hear noise? Do you just see distractions? Do you see storms coming, thunder, if you will? Or do you actually hear and see what God is doing? You see, that's so important. Part of the hope is that through these reflections on the Holy Week, that you and I would really tune our ears to hear God, that we'd really focus our vision and we could see Him, because it's not a given. Not everyone that day got to hear God's voice, only those who were listening. I hope and pray that throughout the rest of this week that you're watching and you're listening to see what God's doing. I know He wants to speak and He wants to show up big time in our lives during these very difficult days. See you tomorrow. God bless.